So with that being said, I don't want to delay it any longer. We want to bring Pastor Jed up here. He's got a powerful message for us, so let's hear it for Pastor Jed.
All right, so, well, I hope that I can continue to make an impact like Pastor Jeff is making an impact in people's lives outside of these doors, amen? And my prayer is for each and every one of you to do the exact same thing, because if each and every one of us had someone like that represented every week, it would be a wonderful place, wouldn't it? The world would be a much better place if we made that type of an impact. So following that voice clip, I don't know where to go. But I believe that God will lead me. I believe that God will, just continue to reveal himself to us and help us in our recovery, help us in our life. Man, it's been a crazy week. It's been a pretty wild day. But as I've been preparing this message, I can't help but to, I don't know how else to say it except I can't help but to keep seeing the depth and the darkness of the addiction. The more that you reach out to people, the more that you help other people, the more that you get outside of yourself, I got to be completely honest, the darker things get. Sometimes reaching out of yourself gets darker before it gets lighter. And what I mean by that is when you start to involve yourself in other people's lives, when you begin to reach out to somebody else, you have to have a certain level of strength to help somebody get up. And when you get down really close to where they're at, when they're down at their deepest and darkest place, and you reach your hand out, you get a chance to see at a close level, you get a chance to see how dark it is down there. And when you've come out of there, you already understand how dark it is. But when you've come out of a dark place or a place of death and destruction, when you come back around it, there's something that clicks on the inside of you that says, I don't want to go back there. But see, it doesn't just stop at, I don't want to go back there. It actually begins to motivate you. It begins to set something in motion on the inside of you that you want to help somebody else get out of there too. And that takes a level of change. That takes a level of something shifting on the inside of you and I. And I remember in using, like the video was talking about, there's so many different ways to contrast this. But I absolutely love the contrast between light and darkness. And if we were to take the lights all the way down and I was just to flash or have one light come down or to flash a flashlight, you know what I mean? We'd only have just a little bit of light. And you can only go so far. I guess the question is how much light are you willing to have come into your life? You know, I titled the message, I got to make sure I get it right, Light Dominates Darkness. Because if we take all these lights down and we pop the lights back up, guess what dominates? Light. But when you take the lights down, what dominates? Darkness. So you can do the same thing in the light that you do in the darkness, but if you try to do what you do in the darkness in the light, what happens? You start to fumble around. If you try to take the things that you're doing in the darkness and you bring it into the light, you're actually 10 times more ashamed of what you're doing. But if you take what you're doing in the light, the things that you're not ashamed of, and you bring them to the dark, you don't even feel comfortable doing it. And so there's a deep contrast between this light and this darkness, but whatever you submit yourself to is what will dominate. And I'll give you an example. For me, I was reminded of kind of the end of my addiction, if you would, I would consider it to be, how many of you ever had multiple low points? Where you felt like, hey, this is as low as it's going to get. You get there, and you get comfortable there, and then you hit another rock bottom, right? And all of a sudden you find tools and different things to start digging even deeper. You didn't even know it could get that deep. You thought it stopped at bedrock, right? You thought it stopped at the cement. You thought that it stopped at the river. You didn't know how far you could sink down in the water. You didn't know how hard you could hit that concrete. You didn't realize that you could fall out of that tree. You didn't realize how hard you could fall and how bad it would be. Because once you hit it, you figured, well, I'm going to fall, and maybe I'll get better, but if I don't get better, then it doesn't really matter. And the addiction just keeps going. And the level of, am I ever going to get better, doesn't ever seem to sink in because there's not really a bottom. So there's different levels to the bottom. And for me, I remember when I got to what I would have considered to be kind of my rock bottom, if you would, and here I was sitting at a friend's house, and some of you have heard my story, but I was bouncing couch to couch at the end of my addiction. It was so ridiculous. But I bounced couch to couch until I bounced right off the couch onto the street. And when I was there, I felt it was the darkest part of my life because I had nowhere to go. I burnt every bridge. Anyone that tried to connect with me, I burnt the bridge. Anyone that had a little bit of trust for me, I burnt that bridge. I continued to break the relationships in my life because that's what I was used to. And so I found myself at a place where it was just, there was no one there was nothing happening in my life, and here I was living out on the street. And it's a common story, right? But I felt so alone. I felt so dirty. I felt so dark. I didn't feel like anyone cared about my life at all. Anyone ever felt that way in your life? You feel like a grain of sand. You feel like just somebody walking through life with no purpose, with nothing happening, and that nobody really cares. I remember walking around during this time of my life, hoping that somebody would pull over to just be kind to me. I remember walking the streets just wishing that somebody would pull over on the side of the road and grab hold of me and say something to me. I was hoping for someone just to talk to. I wanted just a little normality because I had lived so chaotic that I was grasping for something pure. I was grasping for light. Here I am in this dark place in my life, and all this stuff is kind of swirling on around me, and I get this call from my mom, say light. Light. Say light. Light. So my mom calls me, and it was just like everything else that I was thinking about and everything that I was doing just stopped. And she called and she says, hey, I've been thinking about you, and I'm worried about you. Are you ready to really do something? Are you really ready to turn yourself in? Because at the time I was on the run. And I was like, well, my best next option is I'm going to turn myself in and, start doing my time and everything else. I mean, it's actually the best thing on the agenda for me. I mean, this is the best case scenario. This is the next best thing on my agenda, is to turn myself into jail. And in the voice of my mother on the other side of that line is what was the light in my dark situation. The question is can you think back to what the light was for you? Can you even pinpoint what that looks like? Or maybe you're right in the middle of it. Maybe your phone is ringing off the hook even on your way here with the light trying to come into your life. I don't know the circumstances of where you're at, but I remember what it was like to sit in darkness where I couldn't see anything else around me except what I was sitting in. And I could barely see that. And I got to be honest, these are stories you probably hear. You hear it from the pulpit, you hear it from the rooms, you hear it from your friends. And these are real life stories. We all have a story kind of similar to, I was sitting in darkness and this light came shining and I saw the light and all these other things. But then what? Right? What happens after you see the light? What is dominating your life? So I want to go into this in the AA Big Book. It talks about this in Into Action, page 73. And I want to talk about it because a lot of us identify light and darkness differently. And every one of us are at a different phase in our life. And so what I might say to one person may be fitting than if I talk to another person, it might be fitting. But if I put both of you together, you may not get anything. But here we are in one place, there's one message that's being spoken, and I believe that everyone's going to get something different out of this, all right? So here's this. More than most people, the alcoholic or drug addict leads a double life, all right? He is very much the actor. To the outer world, he presents his stage character. This is the one he likes his fellows to see. He wants to enjoy a certain reputation, but knows in his heart he doesn't deserve it. The inconsistency is made worse by the things he does on his sprees. Coming to his senses, he is revolted at certain episodes he vaguely remembers. These memories are a nightmare. He trembles to think some might have observed him. As fast as he can, he pushes these memories far inside himself. He hopes they will never see the light of day. He is under constant fear and tension that makes for more drinking. Look at this, though. Going back up to the point where he talks about leads a double life. What are the two lives that you are leading right now? As you're sitting in this room, what types of observations are you making? What kind of conclusions are you coming to for your own life? Because when you get outside of these rooms, when you face the real world on a regular basis, do the people that you're close to see the real you, or do they see the stage you? What type of a life are you living? Because in all honesty, when you bring your life out into the light or out into the world, if you would, what are people going to see? How are you going to respond to the people that are around you? What two lives are you leading right now? And what you present to others, you will begin to believe. So if you have this person that you are on the inside, and maybe you struggle, maybe you're here tonight and you're struggling right now and you want to get high, maybe you are high or whatever the case might be, what is it that you want to present to other people? Because if you were just honest with yourself and honest with the people around you, you could get real and actually see some transformation take place in your life. That's real recovery. But what you present to others, you begin to believe yourself. So if you start presenting to other people that you have a lot of money, I know nobody in here would ever do that, but you present yourself like you have a lot of money, but you really don't have anything. So when they come to you for resources and help, you can't help them. But see, you want to act like you're somebody when you're not anybody and then someone says, "Hey man, I could really use $100," and you look like you have way more than $100, but really you got about 50 cents. I mean, what do you present to other people? It's not a down on where you're at. It doesn't matter if you got 50 cents in your pocket. But what matters is how do you present yourself out to other people? Because you begin to believe it for yourself. If you begin to believe that you're rich when you're not rich, you're only fooling who? Yourself. But when you can be honest with yourself, is what I'm getting at, and you can put it in the light, you begin to see, hey man, I really don't have that much money, and I'm going to try to find a way to make money. Because you can have the creativity in your own life to be able to create things that make money. Anybody in here have a business? Something that was on your heart that you spoke it out and you began to make headway for it? You have a couple of people who have a business that you created from scratch. I mean, there are ways that you can make. How many of you wish that you had a business or something that you started from scratch? How many of you have ideas that are on your mind right now? Thoughts of things, right? I mean, we have a couple. How many of you don't care? How many of you want to be broke? Got one in the back. No, but when you present it to other people that you have something, that you are something that you're not, you only fool yourself. And a lot of people, myself included, in recovery, sometimes pretend to be somebody that we're not. But when we can get real and we can put this stuff out in the open, we begin to get off of this and realize that the reputation really isn't that. It is important, but it's not that important. What's more important is that you put out you put out who you really are, so that the reputation that you put out, that is out into the public, and that you have with your friendship, with your friends and your family, is authentic. This certain reputation that he's talking about, or what belief and opinion do you carry about you? See, there's a certain reputation that you carry, you put yourself out there, but it's really about how you think about yourself. most of us don't have a healthy balance on who we are. So we either think too highly of ourselves or we think too lowly of ourselves. Right? We get caught on one of those extremes, and we end up going out of whack. And if you can answer that question for yourself, that maybe I think too highly, maybe I think too low of myself, but where can you find the balance in your life? But the certain reputation, the addict or the alcoholic begins to live out somebody that they're really not. Now this spree thing, look at this. When he says, it is made worse by the things he does on his sprees. All right? And this spree is a sustained period of unrestrained activity. Unrestrained activity. And the thing is this something that somebody like you and I, we're, as addicts in recovery, we vaguely remember what we do when we're sober. Half the things that we've done when we were using, we definitely don't have a clue what we did. How many of you remember half the things that you did when you were using? Very, very few of us will ever really truly understand the damage of what we have done in the world around us. Because we've been living like animals out in the world when we were created in the image of God to be human beings. You got to get it. You got to get it. I mean, this is, when you see that, when you can vaguely remember something, or can you even recall what you did on your last spree? What was your last spree? What did that look like? You're all crazy, right? But when you were in the middle of your spree, you knew exactly what you were doing. But you were doing it all in darkness. There was no light, there was no direction, there was no aim, there was nothing. It was just dark. You were in the dark, you knew you were in the dark, and you operated in the dark. And if you operate in the dark long enough, you can begin to see in the dark. I know, and I've shared this before. I was more addicted to the crime side of the drug life than I was the drug itself. I just did the drugs because they were around. But like the crime side, if I was involved in, burglarizing homes or businesses, like I was a thief. And I operated in the dark a lot, and by myself. You get so many people around you, everybody gets busted, and everybody gets caught and then guess what? When you're operating in the dark like that, I remember very, very clearly on some of those sprees where I could literally see in the dark. If you've gotten to the place that you can see clear in the darkness that you're living in, it's a red flag. It becomes a nightmare. He trembles to think that someone might observe him. What would happen if somebody flipped a light on when you were in the middle of your dark deed? I'm talking to each and every one of you in this room right now because it's being highlighted. It's being highlighted because even in recovery, we hide in that same dark deed because it's not just about the dope. It's not just about the activities and things that we were involved in. It's about you as a human being. And when you deal with the human being in recovery, you start to deal with the darkness that needs to get driven out of you, that propels you to do the things that you do. So if I was to flip the light on, what would I see? Nobody's talking about it now. But if we would think about it, if we were to collaboratively write down everything that we do in the dark and put it on a piece of paper, would you be ashamed to look at it up on that screen right now? Because we're always proud of what we do in the dark. But do you understand that you can live in darkness and still be light? The darkness doesn't have to overtake you, is where I'm getting at. The stuff around you maybe has affected you in the past, but you're being taken to a place now in your recovery that you are called to be overcomers and not have that stuff overcome you. I'm tired of seeing people dying. I'm tired of seeing people falling. I'm tired of getting people out of, out of overdoses and seeing them, passed out and lifeless. And I'm tired of seeing people wandering around with knowing they got so much more to live for. And I'm not discouraged, but I get tired looking at it and seeing it. And what it does is it propels me to want to help more. It's not a shameful thing, but I'm telling you what, when the light comes on you and you can see what you're doing, you realize, man, I'm either not ashamed of this or I am ashamed of it. And you got to identify it even in your recovery, because those sprees you go on don't have to be crime sprees. They don't have to be binges. They don't have to be, there's all kinds of other words that I could bring out right now. I'm going to hold back on them. But there's other things that identify what a spree might look like in your life. What are you splurging on? What do you splurge on? Like, man, I absolutely love to splurge on a brand new Bible. Come on, somebody. I love to splurge on a nice journal that I write 2 pages into. I don't want no one to read my journal. I write that, I rip it out, I crumple it up, and I throw it away. I don't want to look back on it. But what would it look like if you bought a journal that you would actually want to read back into again? Or where you got a book that actually fed something good in your life? I mean, these are things that when I see so many people consumed and weighed down with the world and the darkness around them that they can't even see straight. And I see this in recovery all the time. Look at this. There is a darkness that's inside of you that needs to be driven out of you. And each and every one of us have this side of us, and we hear Pastor talk about it all the time. There's a part of me that could easily go off and run into night. But if I don't drive that thing out of me tonight, I could get high. Right? Like if you don't drive that thing out of you, guess what happens? It begins to consume you. It begins to take you over. And so when you can identify what it is this something that's good? Is this something that's beneficial for my recovery, for my family, for my children? Is this something that's good? Is this something that's going to build me up in my life? Is this going to build up the people that are around me? Am I even making any sense? I'm hoping I'm going somewhere with it because we're just getting warmed up. But look at this. If you want light to come into your life, you have to stand where it's shining. You have to stand where the light is shining in order to actually get light into your life. So I know for the first couple of years of my recovery, I was still kind of back and forth with things that I would do, things that I would listen to, places that I would go, people that I would visit, and all these different things that I would feed my spirit, the things that I would invite into my life. What are you inviting into your life? Where are you standing that's bringing life into your life? What kind of people do you hang out with that are bringing life into your life? Because all sober people aren't good people to hang out with. I've run into some people that were sober, that were full of more demons than some others that I hung out with. Come on, you know one. And if you're sitting next to him, give him a high five. I didn't think I'd actually get anybody to do that. But you did it, so now we got you on video. And if you're watching on the video right now, give your sober roommate a high five and say, you need to drive that thing out of you. Different things that we invite into our life, but you got to stand where it's shining in order to really receive the light, to receive the life. Look at this. Where does the light shine? Have you identified places? Have you identified the people? These places where you can stand. I like to stand next to somebody who's in the light. Now, I'm not saying I'll go into dark places. I can name off all the different dark places that I am willing to go, but I'm not willing to go without somebody who's standing in the light. So if I'm going to go help somebody else out who's struggling, who's overdosed, who's next to dying, and their mom's sitting there crying, and all these other things, I could get a lot more gory on it, and I'm not, but I'd much rather be standing with somebody there, with a brother linked arm in arm. I'd rather go into that house that the parent wants us to go and clean it out because there's needles hanging out, there's needles all over the place. I'd much rather go in there and help to clean up all that stuff that was done in the dark so that when the person comes back, they can see a little bit of what the light looks like. But if you stand with people and you go into places that are light, you continue to glow. You continue to grow in your life, in your recovery. It's not that difficult, except we're too used to standing in dark places. You're only as miserable as you allow yourself to be. Romans 7:24. Man, I was miserable for so many years. And I look back on it now and I think to myself, why? Because I was deceived. Satan deceived me to believe a lie, and I began to cling on to these lies that brought me to places that were dark. Bottom line. And there I was. And I found myself miserable when all I wanted to be was happy. I wanted to be fulfilled. I wanted to be enjoying life. But here I found myself miserable with a bunch of other people that were absolutely miserable, and misery loves company. And so here we find ourselves being miserable, but we only get more miserable because we're feeding it. We feed the misery. We feed the misery. And he says, oh, what a miserable person that I am. Have you ever been wretchedly unhappy or uncomfortable in your life? I know I have, and I know I have many times over. And I remember when that relief came, and one of those relief is what I talked about with my mom. I was a wretch, and I was so uncomfortable in my own skin. And I remember when my mom had spoken into my life and said, I want to get you the help, it was like that voice of freedom ringing through the phone. And maybe for you that's a friend or whatever it is. But we need to be standing with people, standing in places that bring light and life into our life. Otherwise, we'll only be miserable for the rest of our life. You know the whole concept of a dry drunk? Or somebody who you know it's on the back, you know it's in the front of their mind, they're going to get high. What ends up happening, inevitably, they end up getting high. And they end up becoming more miserable. I was that person. I remember the relapse over relapse, out-of-body experience out of out-of-body experience, the overdose, the nights in the hospital, the times where I didn't even know where I was. Somebody picked me up on the side of the street because I passed out walking down the road. The misery. Do you remember the misery? Do you remember the darkness? Do you want a way out of it? I mean, do you want to be free, right? Look at this. Who will free me from this life, look at this, that is dominated by sin and death? Who will free you and I from this sin and death? This addiction and this darkness? Who will liberate us from it? Right? Now, if you could have liberated yourself from it, you would have done it a long time ago. You would have. Because I don't believe that everybody in here has wanted to see the things that you've seen or do the things that you've done in your right mind. Probably wouldn't have done half the things that you've done. I wouldn't have. I wouldn't have accumulated 4 felonies on my record and a rap sheet and, articles in the newspaper and, all these bad relationships. I wouldn't have accumulated all that stuff. But what you bow down to now will soon dominate you. When you begin to bow down to these people and these places that are dark, it begins to dominate you. Do you ever go into a place and you pay a fee to get in? No one ever done that? I'm the only person that ever went to a place and paid a fee to get in there? Come on, someone. You know what I'm talking about. There's multiple places that are like that. When you do that, guess what? Guess what? When you're giving permission, you walk through those doors. You say, here's my money, my hard-earned money. I'm going to give it to you. Thank you very much. And I'm going to go enjoy. Whatever's inside the building, we're going to enjoy. So we walk in there, and what's in there? Darkness. All kinds of stuff that just sucks the life out of you. But deeper than that, you give your hard-earned money to go in there, guess what? You are invested in what's happening at the same time. You're invested in it. Whether it's a bar, a club, underground, whatever. I mean, there's rooms, there's multiple different rooms. We could go on and on about it. But you begin to get invested in that stuff. And when you go in there, you almost worship it. You worship the bottle. You worship the people. You worship the things. You bow down, and it begins to dominate your heart, your mind, your will, and your emotions. It takes over everything about your life. And maybe that seems a little bit extreme, but I'm just speaking from, places that I've been, and maybe I'm just completely crazy. And maybe you were in those places and you ran the show. I don't know. I don't care if you ran the show or not. It's still dominating you. It doesn't matter what position you are on the, it dominates you. Now look at this. This is a quote I saw, and I had to pull it out in relation to this, but truth will ultimately prevail where there is pains to bring it to light. They were talking about, I don't know this story. I started to read up on it, but there were so many historical things that I was like, I don't know. But if you Google this and you look at the story about George Washington in this quote, it's something about the army that they were being led to this place, and they were making it out to be something that it wasn't. And by the time they got there, they had realized that the people that gave them the information were hyping this place up to be worse than it was, when really it wasn't that bad. They could have just went in there and taken the place over, right? But because of the intel, because of the person that they were standing with, they couldn't go any further. And so they couldn't go any further. So they lost a few people. They went through some pain because they didn't have the right information. So then as they went through it, all of a sudden they recognized that it wasn't as bad as what they thought it would be. They could have went into it a lot differently. But they ended up losing. There was pain. Sometimes we go through pain in our life unnecessarily. When the light is shed on a circumstance, it may cause you some pain for a season. When you go through a situation that you thought wouldn't be as bad as it is, you go into it, you're preparing that, man, this is going to be a crazy fight. I'm going to go into this battle. I'm all prepared. I'm ready. And you get there, and they're like, come on, man, this is going to be intense. It's going to be insane. And you get there, and all along the way, it didn't have to be as bad as it was. It didn't have to be as bad as it was. A lot of things, we turn the mountains into molehills, or molehills into mountains, whatever that is. But the truth will ultimately prevail where there is pains to bring it to light. Sometimes you got to go through painful situations, and sometimes it may cause you temporary pain. But I'm telling you, you can get through it. But when you stand on the truth, you stand in what? You stand in the light. Because there ain't no truth in darkness. When you go in there, you hang out with people that are there ain't no one telling you the truth. You're always wondering what's going on, right? Now look at this, James 1:8. Your stability is based on your loyalty. Your stability is based on your loyalty. Now, in James 1:8, it says this. Their loyalty is divided between God and the world, and they are unstable in everything that they do. Now, this differentiation between God and the world. Now, number one, even in your recovery, we see this in the steps. We're having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps. And we see that, but let nothing divide your loyalty to God himself. I'm going to say that again. Let nothing divide your loyalty to God himself. God first. In your recovery, God first. You know, and I'm saying you work the steps, put God first. Step 1, you come in there, put God first. You may not even believe in him, put him first. Put him first. You're going to realize much quicker that your life is unmanageable if you just say, you know what, God first. God first. And I guarantee you'll begin to see these steps come alive in your life. You begin to see God come alive in your life. But let nothing divide your loyalty to God himself, right? God in the world, right? The one who created the world. You want to be connected to the one who created the world, not just all the stuff that's going on in the world. How many of you know that there's a big difference between getting involved in all these random things that are happening in the world and being committed to the one who created the world? I'm telling you what, it's a paradigm shift. When you see things from the lens of a God, the God who created the heavens and the earth, and you see this in light of your recovery, you'll see that he's for you. You'll see that God is for you. And that what you're going through, the pain, the suffering, the struggle, the desire to want to use, and all these things, when you submit that to someone greater than yourself, when you submit those things to God, I guarantee you he'll take it from you. You want to get drunk, you want to get high, you want to go rob somebody, you want to go sleep with this person, you want to watch that movie, you want to do that thing, you want to bust a move over here or over there. You submit that thought or that action that you want to get involved in, and I guarantee he'll take it from you. Because light dominates darkness. Light dominates dark. Whatever you take to God, he'll take it from you. He'll take it from you. Especially if it's going to hurt you. If you know that there's something that you have an addiction to, and you just keep holding on to it and you don't let it go, it is always going to take you over. It will always take you over. And if you just hold it in your hand long enough, eventually you're going to use it. Eventually you're going to do it. Right? As soon as there's something in my grasp that I know I'm capable of ruining my life or somebody else's life, I destroy it. I destroy it. There is certain, listen to me, I'll just say it. There is certain music that will set the tone for me to want to get high. I had a relapse after 3 years back. This was back in 2003. I was sober for a few years. And I was, listening to stuff, filling my ears with stuff that was fulfilling, like actually feeding life into my spirit. And all of a sudden, I started listening to some stuff that I was listening to when I was using. And it started to trigger stuff. Over a period of time, all of a sudden, it just set something off inside of me. And so, for me, I've made a decision that there are certain things that I won't look at. There's certain things that I won't listen to. There's certain things that I won't even get close to. Because I know for a fact that if I engage in it, it's going to bring that darkness back over me again. That cloud. I wonder where this thick cloud is coming from that's all over me. Think about where you're standing. Think about where you're going. Think about what you're doing. And I guarantee that when you start to think about it and you invite God into it, he will awaken you to the truth of what you're actually in. And when he flips the light switch on, then you can make a decision. Do I want to engage in this or do I not want to engage in this? Do I want to stand ashamed after this or do I want to stand not ashamed? Do I want to have a clear conscience? Do I want to have a clean recovery? Do I want to have a lasting, solid recovery? It's up to you. I'm going to keep going. Be careful what you plan on doing. There we go. I just pretty much went over it. Did I miss one? All right. Be careful what you plan on doing. This is Proverbs 24:8. A person who planning, plotting, scheming, all night, all week. I know there's probably a couple of people that know what it's like to stay up for weeks on end, planning, plotting, scheming. in the dark, waiting to make the next move. But a person who plans evil will get a reputation as a troublemaker. How many of you were ever labeled a troublemaker? How many of you still carry that label today? But see, here's the reality is when you don't plan evil, no one's gonna label you as a troublemaker. I still have a handful of people that they get around me and they can only see the old me no matter what I do. Right? We all have those people, and we just love them. We just love them. You know what I mean? Because you can't change their mind. You know, the people that you know, you used to have bitterness and unforgiveness and all those dark things against, when you let that stuff go, who's the prisoner now? Right? And now you can help. You can help them, right? You said get that log out of your eye so you can help somebody get the speck out of their eye. Who plans will get a reputation for a troublemaker. But the question is what is your reputation now? You know, are you still carrying that label around knowing that you're no longer a troublemaker? No, I mean, a troublemaker doesn't just become a troublemaker. As we see, it takes a lot of planning. Some of you were administrators before you knew it. Some of you were administrating things. Right? You were doing it in the dark. Choose a good reputation. Proverbs 22:1. I'm so glad I'm not in the center of it, of all that chaos anymore. How many of you are grateful that tonight, how many of you are grateful that tonight you're not in the middle of all that chaos? I mean, for one night, it's a relief. It's absolutely relieving. You know, you get even close to it, you're just like, oh my goodness. So be careful. Oh, we did that one already. We passed that one. Check. All right. Choose a good reputation. Proverbs 22:1. Choose a good reputation over great riches. Being held in high esteem is better than silver or gold. Your reputation is worth more than great riches. Even the greatest riches, the amount of gold, the amount of whatever, you know, whatever currency, you know what I mean? Like, your reputation is something that is being restored as we speak. Some of you have moms and dads and grandpas and grandmas, people that raised you from the very get-go. And you've, not only have you disappointed them, you've hurt them, you've broken trust, you've done all these things, and rightfully so. They have no grounds to want to trust you. There's no, in all honesty, why should the world, in a sense, why should they restore your reputation back to the way that it was? And what was it? What was your reputation before you ruined your reputation? Right? Can you even think that far back? I mean, I remember before I started using, I loved baseball. I played baseball, football, basketball, and wrestling. And I was crisscrossing sports. I was highly active, as, you know, not that I've really toned it down any, but I really loved baseball. It was my sport. And so my reputation was, my coaches thought, man, this guy could really make it somewhere playing ball. You know, that was my reputation. He's a kind, outgoing young man that has something great going for his life. But that was the reputation then. So then fast forward 11, 12 years or whatever the case is, here I am, my reputation was completely smeared everywhere that I went. And so I didn't choose to have a good reputation. I chose the riches. I chose to esteem all the other stuff as being greater than my reputation. And even in your recovery, if you choose the riches, the gold, the silver, if you choose all that stuff, even your status, trying to get connected with this person to get over here, get over there, and all that stuff, if you do that even above having your reputation restored as being a kind, loving, caring person, carrying light in life to other people, guess what? You've accumulated nothing in your recovery. Because all those things matter in your recovery. As you work the steps, you'll see the character defects will begin to come out. Well, what do? You start working on the defects of character. You start to bind together with other people that are doing the same thing. And you start to see that your reputation now, you're no longer titled the troublemaker. And the person that's calling you a troublemaker, you know what? You love them. You love them. Look at this. I love this. Thomas Edison said, I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work. How many failures do I have in the room tonight? Anyone failed at a couple things? I mean, yeah, give yourself a hand for that one. But see, the failures that you went through, the things that you've been through have brought you to the place that you're at today. Now, I would like to say that there are some things I wouldn't say that I had to go through necessarily. I mean, I did. I went through them. I didn't have to necessarily go through them, but I did. And for some reason, God's using it, and, you know, it is what it is. It was a complete fail. You know, I failed way more times than I've done the right thing. You know, there's so many things that I do that are not that haven't been successful, and some things that are still not successful. But I look at somebody like Thomas Edison, who's an inventor. In fact, I mean, I don't even know if he may hold like the most government patents that have ever been given to one person, or something like over 1,000 or something, like crazy. But he's saying this, I think we can apply it to our life. But look at this. Get rid of what's not working. Get rid of what's not working. The job, the relationship, right? These things that we hold so tightly to them because, oh, I need you in my life. Right? That relationship, you're sitting next to him right now, right? I need you in my life. But if it's not good, if it's not light in your life, it's not going to work. It's only going to drag you down. Right? And I'm not saying the person sitting next to you is the wrong person, all right? I'm just saying, like, in your life, you got to be careful. But you got to get rid of what's not the jobs, the relationship, the ideas, the agendas, the things you spend, all these time wasters. Things that eat away at your time that you can't get back. You ever go through a whole week and you realize, man, I probably did absolutely nothing with that week. Right? But it's like, well, have you evaluated why? Why is it like, but even if you failed, take a look at the week. At least do some type of evaluation and find out what are the people, what are the places, what are the things, what are the ideas, what things am I doing in my life that is sucking the life and the time out of my life. Because even if you fail, you can learn from your failures and you can move on. Prepare to be made whole and turn from a life of disaster. Look at this, Jeremiah 29, 10, 11. This is what the Lord says. You will be in Babylon for 70 years. Wow, that was encouraging. You may have a try next 70 years of your life. Add that to your recovery. But then I will come and do for you all the good things I have promised, and I will bring you home again. For I know the plans that I have for you, says the Lord. They are plans for good, plans for light, plans for life, right? And not for disaster. To give you a future and a hope. Some of us are so addicted to the disasters and we're so addicted to the chaos that we don't know any other way to live. So like you saw in the video, the light and the time with mom, the time with your brother, the time with a friend, just calm time, you know, even just a regular conversation that may even get a little bit heated. I mean, those seem boring. It's like, oh, when is this time? I got to hang out with my mom for an hour. Or I got to hang out with my like, how is that? Like, I know people in recovery right now That they would rather go and hang out with a chick for 2 hours than hang out with their mom for an hour. I mean, how do we work an honest recovery, and how do we build some type of a life where we can actually be successful if we don't honor the people that helped save our life or actually help to be the people that brought us into this world? What kind of honor do we give? Yeah, I mean, what kind of honor do we give to them? We give honor, we give respect, and we give our time to the people that don't deserve it necessarily. You got to get it. I'm telling you. You got to let light dominate your darkness. You got to allow the light, you got to allow life to drive out the darkness that's in you and around you. And I guarantee you'll have a greater recovery. And working the steps will be that much funner. Funner. Is that even a word? Whatever. It is what it is. All right, let me get through this here. Remember that am I on this one here? All right. I'm falling apart. You guys help me. Pray for me. Remember that we deal with alcohol, drugs, cunning, baffling, and powerful. Never underestimate your enemy. Never underestimate the darkness. Don't walk into a room that you think you can conquer when it's already conquered you before you walk through the door. It's a setup. How many of you ever walked into an actual setup where you were the one that got marked? You were the one that came in there. You didn't know that it was going to happen. You walked into the room and surprise! It wasn't a surprise birthday party. You suffered. You went through the pain. You lost out. I'm sick of that kind of living. You got to get sick of living like that. Now, without help, it is too much for us. This is out of How It Works, chapter 5. Without help, it is too much. You can't do this thing alone, you guys. You know that. I know that. But there is one who has all power, and that one is God himself. May you find him now. It's that clear. May you find him now. And I know something about God that is like absolutely amazing. He said, in creation, let there be light. And there was light. The creator of light. Why would you not want to find him now? It's a beautiful invitation in a relationship with God, but at the same time, in your recovery, to have that kind of power at work in your life, are you kidding me? I mean, it's beautiful. The kind of light that comes from God himself is absolutely transforming and liberating. May you find him now. But are you open to light dominating your darkness? This light that comes from heaven. This light that comes from a spiritual awakening. This light that comes from opening up your heart to something new and something different. Something that's not dark. Something that's not familiar. Something that's new. Something that's life-giving and good. This is how it works. That's how it worked. This is how the founders of it, they knew it worked. And without God, it didn't work. Didn't work. I'm telling you, ask people who've been sober for 20-some years that aren't still thinking of it. They want to get drunk. They want to get high. I submit this thought to God because he has the power to help. You need that kind of help. If you don't think you need that kind of help, you're in for a surprise. I guarantee it. You get sucker punch in the ring. Let there be light. And there was light. And God saw that the light was good. Then he separated the light from the darkness. Let your good deeds shine bright. Is this next here? Matthew 5:14-16 says, you are the light of the world. You're called to be light, each and every one of you. This isn't just a Bible thing. This is just a natural, this is within your DNA as a human being. You were created to be light in the world. Like a city on a hilltop that cannot be hidden. No one lights a lamp and then puts it under a basket. Instead, a lamp is placed on a stand where it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your good deeds shine out for all to see so that everyone will praise your heavenly Father. What good is shining out of your life? When I'm out and I'm having lunch or I'm getting coffee and I'm hanging out with somebody and I'm going, whether it's somebody who I'm helping or somebody I'm just hanging with and we're strengthening each other, the people around me, whether I know it or not, they are observing my life. The people around you are observing your life right now. And if you don't put out light and life to them, if you don't talk about the things that are happening in your life, then the things that you're not talking about will pummel you in the end. I love talking about how I've been clean and sober and how I absolutely enjoy reading the big book. I absolutely love reading the Word of God. And I'm in public and I'm sharing this because the person sitting next to me might have a loved one that's struggling right now that needs help. You're light. They might have another person that they're close to, maybe not a family member, but a friend that needs hope. You're light to them. You're light. And I'm telling you, those people that may be sitting there wondering, when is God going to ever send somebody my way? Well, when was the last time you carried the message to somebody else who was struggling? The message you hear will be the message that you declare. See, maybe the reason why you're not sharing a message with anyone is because the message that you've been listening to is tainted. Because what you observe and what you take in is what you will give out. So if you're sitting around people and you can hear them talking about they need help or they need some hope or whatever it is, if you're listening to the message, you can share a message of hope to them. That will sharpen your life. That will help you stay sober another day. These are the kind of things that help in recovery and to be free indeed. 1 John 1:5 says, this is the message we have heard from Jesus, right? How many of you know Jesus is someone good to get a message from? Right? I'm not just trying to get churchy on you. I'm just trying to be real with you. Like, if you want to get a good message from anybody, read the message that Jesus carried. Too many people have an opinion about Jesus without ever reading about him or spending any time with him. Oh, yeah, he was just this person. Did you ever read about what he said about himself? He wrote a lot about himself. This is it. He says, now declare to you, God is light, and there is no darkness in him at all. You need this power at work in your life. This power that dominates the darkness. Now, in closing, let God light your lamp and dominate personal darkness. Psalm 18:28 says this, you light a lamp for me. The Lord my God lights up my darkness. Look at this. You can't light up your own path. This psalmist is talking about this. You can relate this to your recovery on every platform. On every platform. Because when you see him say, you light a lamp for me, who are you letting light the lamp in your life? Too many strangers have come in and out of our lives, and they have, they've been the people that have helped us. They've been the people that have done things in our life. But I'm telling you that when you let a stranger light your lamp, then you're going to go in the direction of where that stranger goes because you're closest to them. But when you let God, the one who is the source of light, the one who's the source of the freedom that you find in recovery, when you let him light up the darkness in your life, I guarantee you'll be that much happier in your recovery. You'll be that much happier. Look at this. When you allow this light from God, when you allow this light to be the centerpiece and the shining piece and the center, you don't let anything else get in the way of that light coming into your life, I guarantee that your life and your recovery will be that much stronger. One last thing and then we'll close. You release the light of heaven to dominate the darkness in your life when you welcome God's help into your life. I had to write this down. His help comes naturally through people in your life and from himself. God works miracles in our recovery in ways we will only know when we see him face to face. When was the last time that you were absolutely amazed at what was going on in your recovery? When was the last time that you stood in awe because you realized that it wasn't you just working another program, but this was really you working on yourself and working on the things that you're supposed to be working on? Getting into the light. When you get into the light and you see your recovery, you see the freedom that God has always wanted for you to have. I'm telling you, this is a beautiful picture. Every single one of you under the sound of my voice, you have the potential, and some of you have tasted and you've seen this goodness, you've seen this light, but I'm telling you, there's more to experience. God bless you.